audiences only did want to spend Five Nights at Freddy's, as the fan favorite film fell 76% in its second weekend, without any competition. Yes, hello and welcome to this week's Movie Math, with a shout out to Johnny Neff, who suggested that opening line for me on Twitter. And big hugs to all of you who lobbied for me to use it. But don't cry for Freddy. The movie cost just $20 million to make, and in 10 days, it did 10 times that at the worldwide box office. Oh boy, ka-ching! Universal and Jason Blum are so happy, especially right after Exorcist imploded in their faces. Wow, you never know. You just never know. You gotta keep going. And they also threw a banger of a pizza party on Peacock. Who ever thought anything exciting would happen on Peacock? It's a season of miracles. Isn't that supposed to be Christmas? But now it's Halloween. Last weekend, I wondered if Five Nights at Freddy's would have done as well if it had not come out for the weekend right before Halloween, creating a PG-13 party for the holiday that almost anyone could attend. And we clearly have our answer. I don't think it would have. I mean, I know a lot of you had a problem with that PG-13 rating, but I think it was a crucial ingredient in the special sauce of this film's success. There's other things as well. It's not just a cheap horror film. Jason Blum makes a ton of those, and hardly, this is his biggest opening ever. I think there's also the fun factor because of the video game fandom, and I think also, the tweenness of it, that really fitting with the Halloween feel of trick-or-treating and all that, and it casts a wide net, again, of appeal. And then also, I think the Chuck E. Cheese thing has a bit of the nostalgia factor as well. So it turned out real good. Now Hollywood on that note is definitely in its event era. I'm sure every studio and producer are like, how can I turn my movie into an event? And they sure are trying. The Marvels is throwing a fan event at the El Capitan Theater this week. 2 nights, Thursday and Friday, $50 tickets, but you get some stuff with that, in addition to seeing the movie. But I believe tickets are still available. And I guess, I think for when Marvel was in its heyday, they would have gone like that, but that's tough. We're going to talk about the Marvels at the end of the video when we talk about next week, but yeah. All right, so yeah, can you make your movie an event? And I think other horror movies will try and repeat this release strategy for Halloween, as it's relatively easy to do in comparison to other release strategies. Although it's not quite as easy as you're about to see, because we're going to take a look at Halloween 2024 and 2025. But, on the face of it, you just open your movie the weekend right before Halloween, where in the past, Hollywood has released their scary movies a couple of weeks before Halloween with the idea that they would play for the entire season. And that still works, right, to a degree. The Nun 2, Saw 10, The Exorcist Believer, and even A Haunting in Venice all did okay, especially since they all made it to digital by the time Halloween itself came around. Universal was like, we're going to do it at the same time, which seemed nuts, but it ended up being brilliant, crazy like a fox. That's really interesting because, the release strategy is constantly evolving, particularly post the pandemic. And here you saw it evolve just really, it's like a mad scientist situation, speaking of Halloween, just within this month or so. It's just really, it's fascinating to watch, especially if you don't have a horse in the race, or if you're Universal. Or Jason Blum, because he made it out of there okay. But A Haunting in Venice, by the way, dropped on Halloween itself. And on that day, it was #1 on both digital and Hulu, where it's still #1, actually, on Hulu, and became kind of like a smaller Halloween party. But Five Nights at Freddy's instantly became the Halloween party, and probably drank the milkshake of a few of those other movies, which probably would have done a little better on digital and in theaters the weekend right before Halloween if Five Nights at Freddy's hadn't rolled into town. But shades of Barbenheimer, to be sure. And everyone felt they needed to watch it, even if they weren't a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, or never heard of it, or didn't even particularly care for the movie. It became the thing that you did for Halloween 2023. Because you could go to the theater for a number of days, or you could stream it in the comfort of your own home or on a phone somewhere. You could check it out. And it was sure a short window, but wow, everybody dogpiled on that short window. Again, as I said, it was a party. And for a $20 million budget film, this is incredible. Now let's take a look at the Halloweens to come, because if I were a studio executive or producer, I sure would be looking at these release schedules. And they're surprisingly bare. So next year, only Smile 2 is set for October 18th. Do you move that up? But is Smile 2 really a party? Beetlejuice 2, I think, is going to be a party, and that's set to come out September 6th. Although Halloween's interesting, because as soon as the holiday hits, it's over, it's dead. Again, to keep with the Halloween theme. So you got to be ahead of Halloween at least a little bit. And so I think Beetlejuice 2 is too expensive to roll the dice like that. So I think September 6th is actually a good date for that. And it needs the 2 months to play. Although Jason Blum and Jordan Peele have horror movies set for late September, and one of them might want to try and quickly grab October 25th, that's a little early. See, next year, Halloween jumps to Thursday, but that's right before a weekend. But again, as I said, as soon as Halloween hits, the party's over. So November 1st, that Friday, you can't release a scary movie then. It's pointless. But then in 2025, Halloween hits on a Friday itself. And you would think that would be fantastic. And no one's claimed it, I think, because again, they realize that that's pointless. It's already over by the time Saturday hits. I mean, do you think the Halloween fun will extend into the whole weekend? It could, but I think it's more fun, coming up to it. Especially if it's a Friday, I could maybe see people being like, you're not going to just totally shut down Halloween. Although now they start Christmas as soon as it's 12:01 a.m., although Target had Christmas stuff up before Halloween even hit. So yeah, it's tough. It's a real traffic jam with everybody trying to make money off the holidays. So maybe October 25th actually isn't that bad. So what do you think? Can the Five Nights at Freddy's magic be repeated? With this kind of second weekend drop, I'm not so sure actually. Although a lot of people didn't care for the film, it seems. It had good audience scores, but a lot of the buzz is negative. I think a lot of people who weren't into it to begin with were like, still not into it. I don't think it won anybody new over. But the people who liked it, who wanted to like it, ended up liking it. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are on Five Nights at Freddy's now that, the air has cleared a little bit and you're no longer caught up in the party. But, it was a big enough movie that they're definitely going to make a sequel. So, and I wouldn't wait 2 years for the the Halloween on a Friday. It's too long. And you have Thursday night when the movie can open. You could also always open your movie on a Wednesday, but it's not the same thing. Especially, in October, people are still very much into school and work. Although post-pandemic, who knows? But yeah, Halloween 2024 for October 25th. I'd try, and Blum is a machine. Jason Blum is a movie machine, so I think they could get a Five Nights at Freddy's ready by then. But I would up the budget a little bit. I wouldn't go crazy, but I mean, even if you brought it up to 40, that would still be really strong. But I think I want to try and bring back the people who weren't impressed with the first film, right? Like they were game, but right now I don't know if they're going to come back. So I need more scares, more animatronics, and I'd pay for a big cameo. And it could be a cheesy cameo. What if I got someone else from Scream to go alongside Matthew Lillard? Maybe even Neve Campbell, who of course was booted out of the Scream franchise because they didn't want to pay her what she wanted. So maybe although Scream might go and take her back. And they might be bringing back Matthew Lillard since they dropped a hint for that in the last movie. But anyway, I think they could get somebody fun. Who would you like to see in Five Nights at Freddy's 2? And how would you think the movie needs to be different to maybe get you to revisit it if you didn't care for the first one? But of course, they got to keep it PG-13. As I said, that is vital for that film's success. Because, most horror films are too scary for families. But here they were able to get everybody. Because the movie still seemed very scary, even though ultimately some of you felt that it wasn't. Lot of brainstorming to do over at Blumhouse. All right, so as for the rest of the box office, a slew of small newcomers tried to take advantage of the Dune 2-less weekend, but none of them could really make a go of it. In fact, it was quite sad, with becoming the fourth lowest weekend of the year, and that's been quite the race. It's been a tough year, huge ups and downs. I mean, and I don't even think Dune 2 would have done the trick. I mean, it would have done better than these movies did, but, I think regular audiences are dramatically less excited for the sequel. I mean, when did you fall asleep during the first Dune became a huge running gag when the new trailers started to come out. I mean, there are still, of course, hardcore fans who are like, don't say anything bad about Dune. And I hope you go see this movie a lot of times because I think it's going to need your support. But I've seen the general public kind of, turn on the movie. And of course, Dune 2 was delayed because of the actors' strike and the talent not being able to promote the film. At first we were all like, oh, that doesn't matter. But I have to say, I think it kind of does matter. I think as we're going to go through this weekend's box office, a lot of these movies would have been helped if their talent, their stars, could have done a little bit more to put them on people's radar. I think the movies just don't seem like as big a deal, especially these smaller, less event-like movies, if the actors aren't promoting them. I think otherwise you're like, I'll just wait for streaming, which is what a lot of people are doing. What do you think? Do you now, after we've been a couple of weeks into, the actors not being able to promote movies, do you think that it did make a difference? The actors' strike is maybe almost over. It's been any day now for a couple of days now. I think it should end this week. It should. I don't know if it'll be Monday or even today, but it should end, I would hope by Friday. But, again, we'll see. The actors have bigger, more expensive asks. The top three from last weekend stayed the same, but with different fortunes, as Taylor Swift fell just 12% in her fourth weekend. There's the answer to another of our questions. Would fans watch her concert movie beyond opening weekend? They sure would. And Killers of the Flower Moon, after a disappointing 60% drop in its second weekend, held much more steady this weekend, falling just 25%. That's the number that Killers of the Flower Moon fans want to see. It's made $100 million worldwide so far, which is half of what Five Nights at Freddy's has done. And this movie had a $200 million budget. Scorsese spent $200 million, while Five Nights at Freddy's made $200 million. But Apple swears, they swear they're happy with this box office, likely to try and keep a positive spin on the movie as awards voting swiftly approaches. We're really starting to get there. Then I'm a Critics' Choice member, and our voting starts December 1st, and I have so many screenings over the next few weeks with the studios like, please watch our movie quickly. All right, then, speaking of awards films and newcomers, Priscilla did okay. Jacob Elordi's 2023 is quickly deflating, with both this and Saltburn failing to connect despite a lot of early buzz. Although he got a lot of publicity out of admitting that, he was able, I guess they got a waiver for this. And he got a little bit of attention for the movie, because he, of course, admitted on, I think it was Fallon, that he'd never really heard of Elvis until he saw Lilo and Stitch. That was his introduction to Elvis. And a lot of you thought that was really endearing. And you went to see the movie because Priscilla skewed surprisingly young for a movie about Elvis, showing that the Euphoria star was likely the movie's best selling point, even if it didn't sell that much. I mean, if anyone got anyone in there, it was Jacob Elordi. And wow, that Sofia Coppola is still riding the coattails of Lost in Translation 20 years later and has really yet to create anything of equal or even close to equal note. Whew, I'm sure the Coppola name helps her a little bit to stay in the game as well. But I mean, if this movie can get a single awards nomination, she will continue to make movies. And so far, the movie is still in the race. Awards do help. And they generate a little bit of box office later on. And Sofia Coppola, thanks to Lost in Translation, is still considered, she gets you to the front of the line for awards consideration. I don't know at the front anymore, but at least you're in the game. So that makes her still of some value. So until she proves that she can't even do that, she'll still be in the mix. Then, after Michael Pena impressed on streaming with his new Prime Video movie a few weeks ago, Eugenio Derbez, in a Spanish-language movie playing in North America with English subtitles, opened in 5th place. That is absolutely incredible for the comedian. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. I love Eugenio Derbez. He has been a sensation in Mexico for decades. Really, he did a lot. He voices all the big animated characters for Spanish language. Big star in that regard. Yet he has struggled to break into Hollywood, even though his 2013 comedy, very emotional comedy, Instructions Not Included, was a big hit. It's still to this day the highest grossing Spanish language movie in North America. And it was fantastic. I saw that movie in theaters. I loved it. I wonder if being discovered by Adam Sandler has kind of hurt Eugenio Derbez a little bit. But he's still going. Again, you never know what's going to happen. And this new movie has phenomenal audience scores. And as you can see, for now, pretty darn good box office. And after his supporting role in Apple's Oscar winner Coda, Derbez might be able to spin this into an awards nom for himself. I mean, it's a long shot, But it's not impossible, and it just became a little bit more possible because of this box office. That's the kind of box office that makes people pay attention. They're like, oh wow, especially when they're like, what could I get out of this? I mean, on that note, at the very least, he should be able to keep trying to break into Hollywood and might get even better opportunities. I mean, he's always kind of been around. He just keeps trying. I've interviewed him for some of that. I mean, I couldn't be a bigger Eugenio Derbez fan. I just absolutely love the guy, and he's wonderful in real life. But maybe he'll start to get even better opportunities now that he's proven he's still a very good draw. I mean, if I were a Hollywood producer, I'd be like, we got a role for Eugenio Derbez in this new movie? Meg Ryan, though, no longer a draw. Would not call her. What Happens Later opened at number 9. Although, to be fair, here's a movie which would have really benefited from being able to have the actors promote it. Because after the trailer dropped, distributor Bleecker Street didn't really promote the film. And I don't really think they have the juice to be able to do so, because they're just such a small distributor. But Meg Ryan could have gotten eyeballs on this. She couldn't promote it. Neither could David Duchovny. Did they even try to get a waiver? I mean, Hunger Games got a waiver. Priscilla has a waiver. Why couldn't this get a waiver? Anyway, I think a lot of you didn't even realize that this was out. And even if you did, I mean, let's be honest, it looks like a streaming movie. So maybe it'll find life down the line. But wow, Freelance is still in the top 10. I mean, it has ridiculously low numbers, but it's in it. It's in the top 10, and that's got to be thanks to John Cena. Sorry, Alison Brie, but she has also proven that she has no draw. But John Cena, wow, impressive. If I was his agent, I'd be like, I think I can spin this to be like, look, he's an utter crap, and people still went. Put him in your crap? I'm very happy for John Cena. Also, a stand-up guy. Over on streaming for the first week of October, Loki, even with a first season, aka 6 episodes under its belt, because remember, Nielsen is all about minutes, and they include all the seasons as one. So that should have helped Loki. And we're not even talking half-hour episodes. We're talking episodes around the 50-minute mark. And it still couldn't even break into the overall chart with the debut of season 2. That means nobody was going back and rewatching the first season. But at least Disney Plus had Haunted Mansion, which almost broke 1,000, right, as it hit the service. While Elemental might be sliding down the overall chart, but at least it's still on it. Better than almost everyone else can say. Of course, Suits is still number 1. But Netflix found another oldie to bolster views, Grey's Anatomy, although this show is actually still on, having just completed its 19th season last year, but there's no current season due to the writer and then actors' strikes. Why is it suddenly doing so well, Grey's Anatomy? It didn't drop the 19th season, I don't believe. I'm curious, are you watching it on Netflix? Why all of a sudden? And Reptile, still going strong. Justin Timberlake's holding his breath right now. He's got Trolls coming up, but that Britney book, that was a strong blow to him. On the originals chart, here's some pretty good news for Disney Plus. While Ahsoka also couldn't get on the overall chart either, the season finale for the show did put it in second place on this chart, and it still couldn't get on the overall chart. Oh my goodness. With Only Murders right behind it with its own season finale. Now, Only Murders was instantly renewed for season 4, but there's still no official word yet on Ahsoka season 2, despite some rumors from some scoopers. Man, even Beckham did better than Loki. And Loki is like the MCU's hottest show. What the heck? Is it superhero fatigue? The overall recent damage to the MCU brand? The change to Thursday night drops? I mean, this chart runs through Sunday, so if you picked it up over the next few days after it dropped at all, it would have helped here. But a lot of you tell me that with this new release time, you don't even remember that an episode dropped for Loki. So maybe that's it. What do you think? Oh, it's bad, though. It's bad. Lupin, Wheels, A Wheel of Time, and Gen V finish off the chart. And while it's cool for fans to see these shows up there along with like the big heavy hitters, these numbers are not. None of these numbers are great. None of these shows are a big sensation. I mean, hopefully they're big enough to warrant their budgets. And also it depends, of course, what service they're on. Like Only Murders is on Hulu, so they're like, woohoo! And, Prime Video is also, it's good for them to be in here. But, wow. We need some hit shows. Then with movies, not too much going on here either, although it's worth noting that with Moana now falling off this chart as well, it seems to be the end of the Lin-Manuel Miranda era on Disney+. Little Mermaid didn't keep it going. That's crazy. Is Elemental going to usher in a new era? Or is Disney Plus just flying blind, man? They got no crutches. All right, over on Netflix's charts, Old Dad's still number 1 with Bill Burr actually holding off Emily Blunt and Chris Evans, as well as Jennifer Lawrence with her first full week on Netflix's charts with No Hard Feelings. I mean, these are all very close, these movies, But the fact that Bill Burr is on top in his second week, that's incredible. Netflix will definitely do more with Bill Burr. Either another movie, or because I watched this movie, it was okay. It was. I can see why it's doing so well. I think it appeals to a wide demographic. It's political, but I think it's open-ended political, and that I think it appeals to both sides of the political spectrum. Did you watch it? It wasn't great. I'd give it like a 4, but it did hold my attention. But anyway, as a Netflix executive, I would probably try and give him a series because the movie had that meandering quality to it. Maybe even an old dad series. Maybe I'd see if I could talk this cast into doing a series. And you know what? Even though I gave the movie a 4, I might check that series out. And I'd be like, Bill Burr, it's got to be a little bit funnier. It was interesting, but it needs to be a little funnier. All right, with shows, because Bill Burr can be quite funny. With shows, some of you told me you really liked Bodies, and in its second week, it's risen to a soft number 1, so good for that show. And House of Usher, though, after hitting number 1 in its second week, it was number 2, then it was number 1, now it's number 4. But this is the week right before Halloween. It should have been thriving right now. So unless his next series is very inexpensive to make, I don't know if Netflix should re-up with Mike Flanagan. Again, I know some of you really liked House of Usher, but these aren't the kind of numbers that first made Flanagan a household name, or at least a household name with horror fans. Steven Spielberg's series on extinct animals with Morgan Freeman narrating is the best performance for a science-based kind of show on Netflix since The Blue Zones from a couple of weeks ago, which was about living longer. So you clearly need some kind of gimmick to stand out and compete with the dramas and comedies. Usually the docuseries and stuff are a little lower. And on iTunes, Paw Patrol is number 1. It shot up to number 1. It didn't just come out. It's not on sale. It didn't just go to a rental, but for some reason, it's surging. That's interesting. Is everyone getting ready for the Macy's Day Parade where they have a float? Barbie and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning are still both doing very well, but are behind Paw Patrol now. Well, look, they changed the digital poster for Gran Turismo just as it becomes available to rent. So I don't know if it's it's probably the lower price point, but maybe that new poster's helping a little with the clicks. Are you more compelled to click on Gran Turismo with the new gold undertones that make the floating heads stand out a little bit more? That kind of stuff fascinates me. And I liked Gran Turismo. I saw that in theaters. I thought it was excellent. I wouldn't, maybe excellence too far, but it was solid. It was solid. And I really like David Harbour. All right, so anyway, Sound of Freedom is finding an audience again on digital, as you can see. That took a long time to get to digital, but here it is and doing well. While A Haunting in Venice has also managed to stay in the top 10 a few days after its Halloween drop. It slid down, but hey, it's still in the mix, so that's good. And also, apparently a lot of people are watching it on Hulu, where, as I said, it's still number 1. And The Kill Room, what the heck is this? At first I was like, how did all these big stars agree to be in a Joe Manganiello movie? What did they expect was going to happen besides direct to digital and debuting at number 10? But it turns out that this was all Uma Thurman's idea, as she's also a producer on the movie and put her daughter Maya Hawke in it. Some kind of help is the kind of help we could do without. But Uma Thurman, what are you doing? It's like you and Meg Ryan are in a race to the bottom. And Nicole Kidman, who is in the same group, she's still working. She's working a lot. Nicole Kidman's talk about drinking a milkshake. She's drinking up all the roles. But I would think people would still be interested in Uma Thurman, and maybe not Meg Ryan, but but part of me is like, is it their fault or is it maybe Hollywood? Maybe we should do another Deborah Winger part 2. You might recall that was a documentary by Rosanna Arquette from 2002, so about 20 years ago, which explored why actresses don't have the same longevity as their male counterparts in Hollywood. Because, the idea of that Deborah Winger was in some big movies back in the day, yet nobody heard from her. She did retire, but was it totally her own decision? And that's what the documentary explores. Part of it is, the system. Part of it is choices these actresses made for various reasons, either for personal reasons or because they weren't able to get any roles. It's interesting, and I think it's even more interesting that 20 years later, the same problem still exists with the next generation of major actresses from a time period. Now, speaking of women in Hollywood, here come the Marvels. Is it just going to get worse and worse? Is this going to be the MCU's Birds of Prey? I think it's very similar in that, it's not what the comic book fans wanted, but there is a contingent of fans that are very loud on social media, but probably not going to show up at the box office in a meaningful way, that are really promoting the film and fighting for it, very aggressively. So I think that's interesting. Right now, The Marvels is tracking to be one of the lowest openings ever for the MCU, if not potentially the lowest, because pre-sales are trailing The Flash and Black Adam. And that's real bad. That's very bad. However, Marvel and some of those fans are hoping for a last-minute reprieve, with the movie maybe being really good after all, despite the trailers looking kind of weak. And also, it has 2 major end credit scenes that are huge developments for the MCU. Couldn't be bigger. But I think some recent MCU movies have proven that end credit scenes just don't do the trick. The review embargo lifts Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, and most press will be seeing it on Tuesday night. That's when I'm seeing it. Oh, and remember how Dune 2 had IMAX locked down for 6 weeks? How did they get that? That's incredible. And then when it moved, fans were very excited that might be a lucky break for the Marvels, because it was only going to be able to play on Dolby because of that. But unfortunately, while the Marvels is enjoying both Dolby and IMAX this weekend, it only gets one weekend, because next weekend The Hunger Games has scooped up both Dolby and IMAX. So how do you think The Marvels is going to do? Is the writing on the wall, or do you think there will be a last-minute reprieve? And why? And Nicolas Cage has another movie coming out. Another one. He just released something on digital. This time, Dream Scenario from A24. And this one has a little more buzz than the usual typical Nicolas Cage movie these days. So we'll see. Also, speaking of buzz, It's a Wonderful Knife. I've seen this on social media, so horror fans are excited. Could it be another Terrifier type movie? I think it could, especially since the box office is not very competitive right now. Then, with digital releases on Tuesday, Dumb Money finally becomes available. I can't wait to watch that. And Daniel Radcliffe, his Roku movie, The Weird Al Yankovic Story, will finally be available beyond the service. Then with streaming movies, David Fincher's The Killer hits Netflix on Friday. Whew, no one's talking about this movie. Nobody. I don't even think it's going to be a strong awards contender. But again, if maybe Michael Fassbender had been able to promote this, I think more people, it would be on a little bit more on people's radars. What do you think? Or are you like, Grace, I'm locked and loaded for The Killer on Friday? I mean, I'm definitely going to watch it. It's David Fincher. All right, so finally, and it's free, or no extra cost. Sounds perfect. All right, then finally for series, tonight, Taylor Sheridan's empire continues to expand. Even though he's hit a bit of a rough patch with Kevin Costner, there's just apparently no stopping this guy, especially because he's the crown jewel of Paramount Plus. But he's doing Bass Reeves. I have mixed feelings about this because I really want the Bass Reeves story to be told, but I'm curious. But who knows? People really love Yellowstone, so maybe this will hit. But it debuts 2 episodes tonight on Paramount Plus. Then on Wednesday, Tim Allen is back as Santa Claus with a new season of The Santa Clauses on Disney+. A surprise hit last year. I tried to watch it, could not do it. I felt it was unwatchable. But I have family members who loved this series and are super excited about season 2. What's your Santa Claus story for you and your loved ones? Then on Friday, Emma Stone teams up with Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie for The Curse, airing on Showtime, but also available on Paramount Plus, which now carries Showtime. You would think Emma Stone maybe wouldn't want to do a TV series, right, when she's trying to compete with Poor Things for the Oscar, but maybe it's like the Matthew McConaughey, Dallas Buyers Club, True Detective 1-2 punch situation. I mean, Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie are prestige partners in crime, so that's pretty good. We'll see. Prime Video debuts their James Bond reality competition with Brian Cox from Succession hosting. That just seems weird to me, but maybe some people will check it out. Are you going to check it out? And rejoice For All Mankind fans. I know you're out there. Sometimes you're like, why don't you talk about For All Mankind, Grace? Well, here you go. And I'm congratulating you for making it to season 4. That is mighty impressive for a show that nobody talks about. And that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what are your thoughts on the box office for Five Nights at Freddy's and the upcoming The Marvels? Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.